What up, fellow comic heads? It is I, Comic Head 84, coming at you with episode 1 of Spec Check. Alright guys, welcome. So, this is Spec Check. Spec Check is a show that I plan on doing moving forward, maybe weekly. And here's my pitch for it. I want to just cover pretty much anything in the world of comic specking. Now, I know sometimes speculation is kind of like a dirty word in our world, but I really just want to lean more into like the fun fandom side of it, you know? Because when I think back to when I was like 12, 15 years old, I would kill for things to get all my favorite comic properties to get adapted to shows and movies, video games, things like that. I used to just get pumped when I would throw me a bone and get an animated series here and there, never mind a big budget film. So that's pretty much still my take on when these movies get made. Even when they suck, I'm still just geek out a little bit on the fact that it exists, you know? So I have a very welcoming attitude when it comes to things getting produced, you know? So I basically want to cover, like I said, the world of speculation, but I don't want to just fire through books, spec books, and things that you need to look out for and get like real breaking news and stuff like that. I really just want to go a little deeper into it. So if a property has been optioned, you know, let's dig into that. What does that mean? How far along is it? Who's involved? Do we think it's going to be good? Do we think it's going to suck? What's our hopes for something that would get optioned? You know, dream casting, you know, some wizard casting call vibes involved. Just that fun stuff that I generally do with my buddies when we hear about these movies or are wishing about a movie. I also want to do a little bit of chat about specking even in the comic world, you know. What characters do we think are going to pop or have a resurgence? You know, when we go back to 2018, Cosmic Ghost Rider and Null are two good examples of characters that came out of nowhere and basically now have hot books, and their first appearances are desirable and very relevant, you know. So I want to cover that, and definitely let's talk about what books' values are likely to be affected and spike based on the news that we receive about things being optioned and some that might end up on the screen, stuff like that. Here's the format that I'm thinking. I'd like to do a live show. I'd like to do it live so that we can do it live. Fuck it.
Okay. We'll do it live.
Okay. Well,
no. We'll do it live. Fuck it.
I like to do it live so that, you know, I can host a chat for us to be able to get together maybe once a week and shoot the shit about comics like we do. You know, I just think we got one of the best communities out there, and I love getting together with you guys and tearing it up in the chat and going over this stuff. So that's one. I like to try it live. I've never done a live video before, but I think, yeah, I'll figure it out. Second thing is I think I'd like to have guests. So let's try that out. I would love to have someone join me each time or sometimes, and let's grab a topic and shoot the shit about it, you know? And like most videos of this nature, you know, we don't have to stay super tied down to what that topic is. You know how it goes. Let's just talk comics, you know? So my topic for this first video is I don't want to dive into a particular property or something that's been optioned. I want to first talk about and establish, what does that mean, optioned? When something's been optioned, we hear that term a lot. What the hell is that? So since that's a term that's probably going to be used a lot throughout this series, I feel like we should really pin that down first so we're all talking the same language, you know? So option, when something is getting optioned, it basically means that someone has purchased dibs on that particular IP, you know? So when something gets optioned, it's normally for a certain period of time, normally 18 months to 2 years. They're able to, like I said, put dibs on that property so they have the security to work on that and try and develop something without the fear of someone else coming in and swooping up the idea and doing their own thing with it. Now, when someone options some kind of IP, some kind of comic series, they're really buying three things: the title and the name of that series, the characters and their designs, and the plot, right? So those are the three things that they're optioning when they do that. Now, what we tend to see is that really they want to buy the first two things: the title, the characters, and the plot. They sometimes have their own plans for, which is why a lot of times when we see things that are finally adapted, there's a totally different tone to it, a different style, completely different plot points altogether can happen a lot of times. So that's something that the creators, the original creators, have to kind of roll the dice on and just accept, is that once they give those rights up to be optioned, they really don't have any control over that final product. It's pretty rare that they do, unless they write some kind of certain aspect of that into the agreement. But sometimes they can write stuff in like they're allowed to be on the set each time, but they don't really have any say in on the production. Or there's other cases where they can have meaningful involvement, like East of West, Image Comics East of West has recently been optioned. And the two creators, John Hickman and Nick Dragotta, are both producers on the project. So that's a case where they probably do have actual involvement, and it'll probably end up being something that's pretty close to source material. But in most cases, if a company was to buy or option the rights to Watchmen, there's nothing really keeping them from putting out Watchmen on Ice or something like that. So when something gets optioned, there's a certain order of events that would then happen at that point. First is an announcement is made, and they want to let that news circulate that this series has been optioned. Because the first thing they want to do is try to build some buzz and some hype about the fact that they got dibs on this property by fans and the potential viewers, and also within the industry. They want to get that buzz going. From there, they want to produce a solid script. They want to have something where it's beyond the idea phase, and they got something hopefully that's quality. With those two things in hand, they will try to attach a big name to their project. This is a very important part of the process. So usually it's to grab either a big director or a big name actor and attach them to the property. Those first two steps are important because, if they can prove that they have a good buzz about this particular project and there's people excited to see it, as well as a quality script, something that's just not going to be dog shit, hopefully they can entice one of these people to jump on board, because that's going to be crucial to the next step, which is actually selling the thing to somebody. Because keep in mind, up until that point, all they've done is just called dibs on it. And what they want to do at that point is be able to make a case to a larger company. If it's a TV show that they're trying to do, usually they'll go as far as creating a pilot. They'll get that pilot filmed and shop that around and hope that some decision maker chooses to pull the trigger and buy or order 12, 13 episodes of that show. And in the movie world, they're usually not getting as far as doing any principal photography and start filming anything. Sometimes you just might get as far as a full script with confirmed people attached to it. Sometimes you get some photos, some initial images of what things would look like, maybe some sample footage of things here and there, but it usually doesn't get very far along until a green light has been granted to some. Now, historically, this has been a tough sell because whoever these bigwigs are in the movie game, they normally don't give a snit about these comic properties. And, they ain't that worried about it. But with the recent resurgence of all these movies, what the MCU has done, it's a kind of a cool time because they've proven that there's a market for it. And that's really all that these people at the executive position, where their job is not to be creative. Their job is not to make content like that. Their job is to spend the money in the right place, invest in the right projects, and bet on the right horse, basically. And in the past few years, superheroes have been a damn good horse to bet on. So while something being optioned doesn't guarantee anything, lately it's been a pretty good sign that something might get made because they make money and they have audiences. You know what I mean? Now, here's the thing. We hear a lot about things getting optioned, and it's because it's so easy for shit to get optioned because it's very short money. Now, the average amount of money to option a project is $1,000 to $50,000. Somewhere around there in that range is the amount of money that's spent for most of the things that we hear about getting optioned. It's usually getting optioned for around that amount of money. Now, to a comic creator, who a lot of times they're not rolling in the dough, this industry isn't what it used to be, that's a good chunk of change. For something they don't have to do additional work for. It's kind of like free money to them. So they'll grab that initial check. Now, in the world of Hollywood and the kind of budgets that they're used to dealing with, that's like chump change. $50K is very easy to get dropped on something, even if it doesn't work out. So it's a low barrier of entry. Shit, a few of us could get together and go and option a project, and try to get something made. That's the tricky part, is getting it made, getting it sold. Because that's where the real payday comes in for the creator and the person who took the initial step of investing the money to option it. So that's when it truly gets purchased. Till then, they're just renting the idea and have permission to work on producing something. So when something gets purchased, let's use Kick-Ass as example. The Mark Millar movie Kick-Ass. The average purchase price to the creator when something gets bought is about 2 to 5% of that production's budget. 2 to 5% of that is usually allocated to buying out the person who had the original IP, right? So Kick-Ass, which was kind of a smaller movie, I get compared to like Avengers. Avengers 1 had like 225 million was that movie's budget. That's kind of a different realm, but stuff like Kick-Ass, that was a $30 million movie budget. So, that was like a little over $1 million that I assume Mark Millar made off that sale. V for Vendetta was $54 million budget. 300 was a $65 million budget. So that's the kind of money that we're talking when they can actually sell the property. All right, y'all. Hope that was informative. Hope that was interesting. Now it's time for the final segment of the show where I want to grab a character or a book that currently doesn't have any attachment to anything, but I would consider a spec. This is a spec check. This week, I want to call note to Spider Ben, and Petey from the Spider-Geddon comic series. These guys, with the Spider-Verse movie coming up and all these different worlds of Spider-Man, there are some that are building up more hype than others, and I haven't heard these guys mentioned yet. But I got a feeling that these characters are just too cool to not be used. I mean, I've heard them talk about using Spider-Punk and stuff like that, and them using Penny Parker shows me that they're willing to work with newer characters and ones that really aren't that established or have much buzz. So I would grab up this book on the cheap at the moment, because I got a feeling that we'll see these on the screen, and these are probably my favorite Spider-Verse alternate versions of Spidey. These guys were awesome. So that's my spec check. And lastly, I want to put out the bat signal here. Anyone interested in being a guest on my little gimmick here, give me a shout. I'm kind of like, I'm new at this, you know, I'm new to the game, so I'm a little shy to go out and just hit motherfuckers up and say, hey, come on the show, because I don't even know how to make a show, but I'm going to try to just wing it, right? I've never done one of these Google Hangout things, but I just want to say that I've been inspired to make this shit, and I feel welcomed and comfortable enough to even make these videos because of the people that I watch and that I'm big fans of. The first couple channels that I ever watched, like I said, I just got back into collecting this year, so I'm a lifelong comic reader and growing up with this stuff, but it's in this past year where I really got back into collecting and buying slabs and all that kind of thing, and a lot of that was in thanks to like the first two channels I started watching, Gem Mint Collectibles and Comic Tom, were the first two that were my jams. But even all this other current crew of guys that's putting out videos, like Tony Sanders, White Whale Comics, John's Comics for Kids, Thanatos, Reggie, of course, Jeff Comic Con, and even some of the smaller channels that, you know, I'm chatting with on the reg and watching all their videos, like my boy Comics Addiction, Comic Books NYC, Mr. Miracle Comics, Comics Most Wanted, I Love Sign Comics, Los, all you guys, awesome. And I wanted to give all you guys a shout out because everyone that I just mentioned, you know, basically consider that an open invite to jumping on with your boy and having us just do a little impromptu chat and talk about some comic world shit, some comic speculation stuff. All right, so open invite, holla at your boy. Episode of Spec Check in the books. Let me know if you want to see more. Let me know if you dig it. And see you next time. Peace!